is a guy named Daniel Lim. Daniel Lim's in high school in Fayetteville, New York, coming all the way from Syracuse, New York. Where are you, Daniel? You're up, Daniel. Your mic is live.
So, I would like to start off today by thanking the special guests tonight, and especially the creators of this program, and especially Mr. Song, who gave me the opportunity to be in the law enforcement internship. The program allowed me to learn more about the role of law enforcement in making our society safer, and also allowed me to appreciate the great work that law enforcement has kept up and continue to keep up. So the focus of my paper were various types of crime, such as drug crime, sex crime, and violent crime. However, today I would like to talk specifically about gun violence. I'll start off by referencing an article that I saw on USA Today. As you all may know, the most recent Olympic Games was hosted in Pyeongchang, South Korea. The Olympics are usually an event with heavily armed security, and one would assume that South Korea would not be an exception due to the hostility and tensions that are still existent between the North and South Koreans. However, as a Denver resident that was visiting the Winter Games put it, security was almost non-existent, and the games lacked the heavily armed security that was seen in Sochi 4 years ago. Officials said that the lack of highly visible security presence reflects the low levels of violent crime and low homicide rate in South Korea, an effect of the restrictive gun laws that are in place in South Korea. In fact, South Korea, a nation of 51 million people, only had 356 homicides in 2016, most of them non-gun related. This is in harsh contrast to Chicago, a population of 2.7 million people, which had 762 homicides in 2016. The statistics and the facts reveal that the U.S. is struggling with gun-related violent crimes, which has led to a very controversial gun debate. Although the gun debate in the U.S. is a very controversial topic, most people in both parties can agree that a solution has to be made, and have offered different solutions to the gun debate. On the conservative side of the political spectrum, a repeal of the Second Amendment is unthinkable. Guns have been a part of America's culture ever since the 1800s. The conservative side has known and utilized this right to bear arms. However, it is important to note that the conservative side of the spectrum is open to reforms, and most are willing to accept the solutions that are being put forth by progressive-minded people. The problem isn't about taking away the Second Amendment. The problem is about where we draw the line in terms of what types of guns people are allowed to buy and how we are able to obtain these weapons. Some conservatives are willing to draw the line at semi-automatic guns, which are still able to be obtained. One conservative that expressed this view of reforms to the Second Amendment was a Republican congressman that wrote on the New York Times. The congressman, Brian Mast, was a U.S. veteran from Afghanistan and said that the rifle he used in Afghanistan was very similar to the AR-15 that was used in the Parkland shooting. He stated, "We used it because it was the most lethal, the best for killing our enemies," and declared that he couldn't support the use of the weapon he used to defend lives being used to kill children. The progressive side wants to go further into the regulation of gun violence. A New York Times article published by Nicholas Kristof supported this ideal. He used the idea of the car as an example. Conservatives argue that if cars kill so many people, why there wouldn't be a ban on cars? The answer from Kristof is that companies have worked hard to decrease death by car by implementing safety nets such as seatbelts, airbags, driver's license, and by regulating the driving age limit. If cars, which are one of the leading causes of death in the U.S., have rules and regulations, then so should guns. In Kristof's article, he underlined a couple of regulations that both sides are in favor of, which included background checks for purchasing guns. However, he also outlined some other rules and regulations that should be implemented, which included banning under 21s, banning semi-automatic guns, specifically the AR-15, which has been responsible for a number of mass shootings, and the banning of bump stocks. However, he argued that the U.S. is moving in the opposite direction. Instead of tightening gun regulation, most states have actually loosened gun regulation since 1991, with few states enforcing stricter gun laws. An example of the tightening and loosening of gun regulation can be seen in the states of Connecticut and Missouri. After Connecticut tightened gun regulation in 1995, homicide rates dropped by 40%, while Missouri saw an increase by 25% in homicide rate after loosening gun regulation in 2007. Aside from the debate on gun control, I would also like to point out the importance of cracking down on urban gun violence. Urban gun violence is arguably more important to deal with than some of the gun violence that is shown on the news, such as gun violence in schools. This is evidenced by the fact that black men in urban communities make up only 8% of the U.S. population, but accounts for more than 50% of gun homicide victims each year. There are several approaches to intervention to reduce urban gun violence. Among these solutions are zero-tolerance policing and focused deterrence. Zero-tolerance policing is the idea that law enforcement should punish minor crimes and disorder on the theory that disorder sends a message that crime is tolerated. In contrast, focused deterrence targets the worst behavior of the most violent. It doesn't seek to dismantle gangs, just to keep them from shooting. The success of focused deterrence can be credited to David Kennedy, who started the program under the name Operation Ceasefire. The goals of the program were to carry out a comprehensive strategy to apprehend and prosecute offenders who carry firearms, to put others on notice that offenders face certain and serious punishment for carrying illegal firearms, and to prevent youths from following the same criminal path. David Kennedy decided to implement this strategy in an attempt to prevent gang violence by making gang members believe that severe consequences would follow from violence and gun use. The results of Operation Ceasefire were alarmingly successful, leading to a 63% reduction in the average monthly number of youth homicide victims in Boston. In conclusion, a solution that both parties can agree on has to be made. The gun debate has turned into a politically dividing matter where a solution is difficult to make due to different political ideologies. The only way that we can progress in this ongoing debate is by putting aside our political differences and by actually discussing and coming up with solutions both parties can agree to. In the meantime, while the debate is at a stalemate, a temporary solution to the urban gun violence are examples like Operation Ceasefire.
Great job, Daniel. Is there any comments from our speakers?
How you doing? Chief Imbruglia from Wallington. I found it very interesting how you compared South Korea and Chicago, which I'm sure is two different worlds. But my question to you is, did you really see the violence that we're talking about? Was it really legally purchased guns, or was it more black market type of guns that are committing this type of violence?
I would say it's
Chicago?
In Chicago. Chicago, yes, yes, sir.
in the article that I saw, there wasn't really much discussion about the type of gun that was used in Chicago, but I would assume that it would be legally purchased guns.
Thank you.
So Daniel, you know, this firearms debate probably belongs on the federal level on Capitol Hill, but I can tell you the good news and bad news. The good news is that New Jersey has one of the strictest gun laws in the country, where if you want to buy a handgun or possess a long rifle or shotgun or buy ammunition, you got to go through a process, background investigation, and your local police chief has to sign off on you to obtain or authorize you to obtain a handgun or a long gun. The bad news is that there are states where all you need to be is 18 or 21, depending on the age. And as long as you're that age, you can go in and buy a gun, and you can put it on your belt and walk around in the department store, the streets. It's that bad. but I can tell you that New Jersey is one of the toughest and strictest gun laws in the country. We take pride in what we do, and it is a dangerous world out there, but I can tell you that here in New Jersey we do it probably just as good as the states that have strict laws. So great topic. I want to congratulate you on your topic tonight, giving it out and answering some questions. Thank you for standing up there and doing what you got to do, and thanks for coming back. I know you were a member of our summer internship program, and tonight was your last obstacle, how to get up there in front of your crowd and say what you said. Are your parents here as well?
Yep.
Where are they at? Recognize? Yeah, there's Mom. Hi, Mom. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Daniel. Okay, our last presenter is Winston Kwan, and Winston Kwan is a 9th grader at Fairlawn High School. Winston,